Valerie Thompson sensed the change before she saw it. The distant hum of a black SUV's engine broke the stillness of her ranch. She stood at the fence line, watching it idle on the road like a predator stalking prey. Strangers didn't come to Mill Valley without a purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Valerie's instinct, shown by years spent battling threats most couldn't comprehend, kicked in. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a warning. Her quiet life, carefully constructed after her husband's death, was about to shatter, but this time, she wasn't going to be caught off guard. Whoever they were, they didn't know what they were walking into. Drop a comment and share where you're joining us from. If stories like this resonate with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey coming tomorrow. Valerie Thompson wiped her hands on her worn denim jeans, eyes narrowing as she stood at the edge of her 200-acre ranch. From the corner of her vision, she spotted something unusual: a black SUV parked along the distant road near the north fence line. It wasn't moving, just sitting there. The setting sun reflected off its windshield like a warning beacon. She remained motionless, her gaze fixed on the vehicle for a few moments longer. Whoever they were, they hadn't come here by accident. She didn't need to jump to conclusions. Not yet. Valerie had learned to suppress impulsive reactions in her former life. Instinct alone was never enough in her line of work. Quietly turning back toward the main house, she reminded herself to stay calm, even as old memories stirred memories of dark streets in Guadalajara, cartel meetings where a single wrong step could cost lives. As she reached the front porch, her ranch hand, Marco Herrera, approached with a brisk pace, the hint of tension evident in his usually easy demeanor. "Miss Valerie," Marco called out, pulling off his cowboy hat. His expression was serious. "You hear about Ramon Lopez? Sold his property last night, packed up and gone. But there's more. Those same guys, they've been asking questions about this place. Ramon says they're looking for land." Valerie gave a slow nod, her mind racing. "They've already been here," she replied quietly. "North fence line, black SUV." Marco's face tightened. "That's not good. Same kind of vehicle they used when they visited Ramon. They were dressed like city men suits, expensive shoes. Definitely not locals." Valerie leaned on the railing, her gaze drifting back toward the far fence. She recognized the pattern: pressure, intimidation, and forced cooperation. This was how it started. The pieces fit too perfectly to be coincidence. "They think I'm like Ramon," Valerie said, her voice low but firm. "They don't know who they're dealing with." Marco looked at her for a moment, sensing the weight of those words but unsure of their full meaning. Valerie didn't elaborate. There were parts of her life no one here knew, parts she had buried when she and Edward started building this ranch 2 decades ago. But some things never truly stayed buried. She exhaled deeply. "We need to be ready. Warn Antonio. Keep an eye on the property lines. Let me know if anything else happens." "Yes, ma'am," Marco replied, already moving to follow her instructions. Valerie stood alone for a moment longer, her mind settling into the familiar rhythm of analysis and preparation. Whoever had sent that SUV would be back. They always came back. The next morning, Valerie made her way to the south barn, where Marco was waiting with a few surveillance photos he had taken during his evening patrol. The images showed the same black SUV parked near her ranch the previous night. 2 men were standing near eye-tone tall, well-built with a sharp suit, and the other more casually dressed, but equally watchful. "Recognize them?" Marco asked, passing her the photos. Valerie studied the images, her mind automatically cataloging details. She didn't recognize the faces, but she knew the type. These men weren't just business investors. They were here to intimidate and claim territory. Valerie felt the familiar weight of suspicion pressing on her shoulders. Later that afternoon, the threat revealed itself in full. A convoy of vehicles, led by the black SUV, rolled onto her property. Valerie stepped out onto her front porch as 3 men exited their cars, including the tall man from the photo. He introduced himself with a cold, measured smile. "Ricardo Mendez, Val Verde Agricultural Investments," he said. extending a hand. Valerie didn't take it. "We're looking to expand our operations. Thought your ranch might be a good fit for acquisition." "I'm not selling," Valerie replied without hesitation. Ricardo chuckled softly. "Let's not rush things. We offered generous terms. You could retire comfortably." "No sale," Valerie repeated, her voice firm. Sheriff Elena Torres arrived moments later, stepping out of her patrol car and positioning herself closer to Mendez than to Valerie. "Everything all right here, Miss Thompson?" she asked, her tone far too casual for the situation. "Everything's fine, Sheriff. Just turning down an offer." Mendez's smile tightened as he turned back to his men. "We'll be in touch." Without another word, they returned to their vehicles and left. Valerie watched them drive away, her senses alert. The sheriff gave her a final glance before following the convoy off her property. "They think I'm an easy target," Valerie thought, her eyes narrowing. "They have no idea who I am." If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. It means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story. Valerie leaned on the wooden railing of her porch, watching the horizon. The meeting with Mendez had stirred memories she had worked hard to suppress. The calm exterior she maintained masked years of experience, years spent infiltrating and dismantling cartel operations across Latin America. Her phone buzzed. It was Dr. Andrew Stanton, she answered, grateful for the familiar voice. "Marco told me about the visit," Stanton said. "Sounds like you're dealing with something serious." "It's starting," Valerie replied. "They've sent someone to test the waters." "Ricardo Mendez." Stanton hesitated. "Mendez, I've heard of him. Ambitious, dangerous." Valerie sighed, her mind drifting back to a conversation with Edward, years before he was killed. He had been increasingly worried, noticing strange activity around the ranch. "It's more than just land deals, Valerie," he had told her. "Something's coming. Be ready." She hadn't taken him seriously then, thinking they could leave her past behind. But she'd been wrong. When Edward was killed in what the authorities called a random accident, she'd suspected otherwise. The evidence had been too convenient, the timing too perfect. "I should have seen it sooner," Valerie whispered, half to herself. "You couldn't have known," Stanton said gently, reading her thoughts. "But you know now." "I do," Valerie agreed, her jaw tightening. This time, she wouldn't be caught off guard. Edward had warned her, and now she would honor his memory by finishing what they had started. Thick black smoke billowed on the horizon, darkening the late afternoon sky. Valerie's stomach sank as she stepped out onto the porch. Marco's truck roared up the driveway, gravel scattering under the tires. He jumped out, his face tense and covered in sweat. "Ramon's barn's on fire," he said, his voice hurried. "They hit it early this morning. He barely got his livestock out in time." Valerie's mind immediately shifted to protocol. "Was anyone hurt?" "No, but he's shaken up," Marco replied. "Said they left a message, something about knowing who stands in their way." Valerie clenched her jaw, her thoughts racing. This wasn't just intimidation. It was a declaration. They were escalating, and they wouldn't stop until they controlled everything. Her eyes swept over the ranch perimeter, instinctively checking sight lines. Time to activate more of the security measures she'd been holding back. Antonio arrived moments later, his face equally troubled. "Miss Valerie, it's not just Ramon. My cousin at the sheriff's office heard something. These guys are keeping tabs on families, mine included. There were men near the school where my kids are, taking pictures." Valerie's hand tightened into a fist. "They're testing how far they can push us." "We can't let this go unanswered," Marco added firmly. "We won't," Valerie said. She turned to both men, her voice steady. "Double patrols. Start documenting every vehicle, every stranger near this property. We need all the evidence we can get." She stood silent for a moment, weighing her next steps. The cartel was making their move, and they wouldn't stop until someone stood in their way. Valerie's resolve hardened. She glanced back at the distant smoke. It's time to fight back. Valerie sat in her office, the glow of her secure laptop screen illuminating her face. An encrypted video call connected, and Sofia Morales appeared on the screen. Her expression was serious, the years of their shared work reflected in her steady gaze. I received your request, Sophia began. You were right. Ricardo Mendez's group isn't just here for land. They're setting up a logistics hub, drugs, weapons, human trafficking, and there's someone else involved. She paused before continuing. Luis L. Halcon Ortiz. He's overseeing their cyber operations. Valerie's eyes narrowed. She remembered El Halcon, a tech specialist notorious for crippling systems with a single coordinated attack. He's here? Not yet, but he will be, Sophia confirmed. They've already launched minor cyber probes. They're looking for vulnerabilities. If you go public, Ortiz will retaliate hard and fast. Valerie leaned back, weighing the risk. We need people to see what's really happening, Sophia. If we keep this in the shadows, they'll control the narrative. And if you're exposed too early, they'll take you down, Sophia warned. You'll be up against more than just Mendez. Corruption runs deep: law enforcement, border patrol, local officials. They'll protect their own. Valerie exhaled slowly. The stakes were higher than ever, but she wasn't backing down. I'll take that risk, she said firmly. Send me the files. I'll handle the rest. Sophia nodded. Be careful, Valerie. They're watching. As the screen went dark, Valerie tightened her grip on the mouse. The game had officially begun. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. It means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story. Valerie met Agent Peter Daniels in a discreet corner of Dr. Stanton's veterinary clinic after hours. The agent stood tall, his sharp eyes assessing her the moment she walked in. He didn't offer a handshake, and neither did she. Miss Thompson, Daniels began, I've been tracking cartel property acquisitions in this region. Your name came up after recent incidents around Mill Valley. So, you're here to help? Valerie asked coolly. Daniels gave a slight shrug. I'm here to investigate. We have evidence linking Los Perros Negros to multiple land grabs, but your sheriff's office isn't exactly cooperative. Seems there are connections. Valerie crossed her arms. Corruption runs deep here. You can't trust Torres or most of her deputies. If you're waiting on their help, you'll be wasting time. And if I'm supposed to trust you? Daniels countered. She met his gaze evenly. You'll have to, because unlike your people, I know how these cartels operate. I've dealt with them before. Daniels hesitated, then nodded. Fine. You give me the intel, I'll give you federal backing. But this stays quiet for now. Agreed, Valerie said. Though the alliance was uneasy, it was a necessary step in dismantling the cartel's hold. Valerie's morning routine was disrupted by the sudden crash of her computer system. The security feeds from the property went dark, and her laptop screen flickered with an ominous message. Access denied. System compromised. She quickly grabbed her encrypted phone, dialing Sophia. They've started, Valerie said as soon as Sophia answered. Ortiz is fast, Sophia replied. It's a full-scale cyber assault. He's likely probing your network for sensitive data. Valerie was already moving, activating her backup systems. Hidden cameras with independent power supplies came online, feeding secure footage to a separate laptop hidden in the basement. Within moments, she had her sightlines restored. They'll have a hard time finding anything useful, she muttered, glancing at the new feed. Outside, Marco was driving toward the main gate, but Valerie noticed something unsettling on one of the screens. A black sedan idled near the ranch entrance. The passenger door opened, and two men stepped out, surveying the area. Valerie zoomed in on their faces. They weren't locals. Moments later, Antonio arrived at the house, visibly shaken. Miss Valerie, they're getting bold. My brother said someone was parked near my house last night. Same kind of car. They're trying to rattle us, Valerie said, her voice steady. But we're not backing down. Just then, Marco radioed in. Got eyes on another car North Ridge. They're scoping out your property lines, ma'am. Valerie moved to the window, scanning the distant fence. Sure enough, two more figures were standing near the north line holding binoculars. She recognized one of them, Ricardo Mendez. He was making his presence known, testing her defenses. They're escalating, just like I thought, Valerie murmured. She activated a hidden microphone linked to the perimeter cameras. Mendez's men wouldn't find her blind. Through the lens, Valerie observed their movements with cold precision. "You're not as invisible as you think," she whispered under her breath, a grim determination setting in. Valerie sat at her secure station, carefully monitoring the encrypted radio frequencies Sophia had intercepted. Over the past week, she had fed the cartel disinformation, fake plans for land sales, false contacts at border checkpoints, and rumors of law enforcement investigations targeting specific cartel members. "Stage 2 is in motion," Valerie murmured to herself, as Marco reported in from his patrol. He had seen tension growing among the cartel's scouts near the ranch. They were watching each other now, not just the property. Sheriff Elena Torres was losing her grip on the situation. Valerie had ensured that reports of her deputies collaborating with the cartel were quietly circulated to trusted contacts in neighboring jurisdictions. Deputies Martinez and Jenkins, who hadn't been bought, confirmed that other deputies were questioning Torres's leadership. Arguments between the sheriff's men were becoming more frequent and public. Later that night, Valerie tuned in to a cartel communication channel Sophia had hacked. Crackling static gave way to angry voices. "You let Ortiz call the shots, and now this operation's a disaster," one voice snarled. "Don't blame me. Mendoza screwed up by trusting those ranchers," another countered. Valerie listened with satisfaction as the accusations escalated. The cartel's leadership was fracturing under the weight of misinformation and paranoia. "They're chasing shadows," Valerie thought, her lips curving into a cold smile. Every move they made would drive them further into chaos. She keyed her secure channel to Marco. "Keep an eye on the north side. Things are about to get interesting. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. It means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story." The moonlight cast long shadows over the open fields as a convoy of vehicles approached Valerie's ranch. Hidden cameras tracked their every move, transmitting the feed to her control room. The cartel had taken the bait. Ricardo Mendez, Luis El Halcon Ortiz, and several lieutenants exited their vehicles near the barn. They were here expecting a deal, a chance to salvage control of their crumbling operation. Mendez scanned the darkened property, his body tense. "Where is she?" he muttered, his voice low but edged with irritation. A voice boomed through the ranch's speaker system, startling the group. Valerie's calm, commanding tone echoed across the fields. "Looking for me, Mendez? You should have stayed in the shadows." The cartel men froze. Mendez's eyes narrowed as he turned toward the source of the sound. "Thompson, you have no idea what you're messing with." "I know exactly who you are," Valerie replied, her voice steady. "Ricardo Mendez, Luis Ortiz. You thought you could control this town. You thought no one would notice your corruption spreading like a virus. Well, you were wrong." Ortiz pulled out his phone, trying to make a call. The line was dead. Valerie chuckled. "Cell towers? Offline? Communications? Jammed. You're done playing your games. You think this changes anything?" Mendez shot back. "You've made a huge mistake." "No, Mendez," Valerie said, her voice hardening. "The mistake was underestimating me. I've shared everything: documents, surveillance footage, recordings. The FBI and federal agencies have your entire operation mapped out. Every corrupted official, every transaction, every smuggling route. And now, the whole world is watching." Spotlights flicked on, illuminating the ranch and exposing the cartel leaders. From the ridge, Marco and Antonio emerged, weapons in hand but lowered, a silent show of strength. Sheriff Torres's patrol car was pulled to the side, deputies Martinez and Jenkins already placing her under arrest. "You've got two choices," Valerie continued through the loudspeaker. "Walk out peacefully or face a public downfall that'll destroy your entire network. Either way, it's over." Mendez looked around, realizing the truth. His men hesitated, fear and doubt breaking their bravado. Slowly, he raised his hands, signaling surrender. Ortiz followed, muttering curses under his breath. Valerie watched from the control room, her eyes unwavering. It was over. They had come expecting control but left in defeat. The early morning air was cool as Valerie stood on the front porch of her ranch, watching the sun rise over Mill Valley. The night's events had ended in victory. News of the arrests had already spread. Ricardo Mendez, Luis Ortiz, and their lieutenants were in federal custody. Sheriff Torres had been escorted from the scene in handcuffs, her web of corruption exposed by her own deputies. The townspeople had begun to gather at Ramon Lopez's property, where the barn fire's ashes were finally being cleared. Families who had once lived in fear now spoke openly about reclaiming their land. Valerie could hear distant voices carrying on the breeze, hopeful, determined. Marco approached, a satisfied grin on his face. Word is spreading fast. People are calling you a hero. Valerie shook her head, her expression thoughtful. It wasn't just me, Marco, it was all of us standing together. He nodded, understanding her meaning. Still, without you, we wouldn't be here. After he left, Valerie allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Edward's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of the conversations they'd had about protecting the town. He had believed in this place, and now, so did she. You were right, Edward, she whispered softly. They didn't break us, we built something stronger. With a final glance at the horizon, Valerie smiled. The town had its future back, and Edward's legacy lived on in every step forward they took. One woman's refusal to give in to fear brought an entire criminal empire crashing down. What do you think it takes to stand up to such overwhelming odds? I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.